want to be in the city. I want to be out in the woods. Right in those pines.
Didn't last long, though, did it, the woods?
No.
Yeah.
And they're still building, too.
Okay, thank you. Okay, they're ready to begin.
Ready? Excuse me.
I guess I just start any time? Okay, okay. Please tell us your name and where and when you were born.
Henry S. Allen, Sr., born Allen's Baker's Crossroads, which is in Horry County. Date of birth at 3 September 1924. Went to Valley Forge Elementary School, Alexander Graham Junior High School dropout.
All in Horry County?
No, I moved to, after my father's death, I moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is where I went to junior high school, which is Alexander Graham Junior High, and dropped out of high school and went to work in a shipyard in Wilmington, North Carolina. And later date, I completed high school.
How did you come to be in the United States Army?
Working on a defense job, I could have been deferred from service, working on ships for the Defense Department, but so many classmates and friends was in service, and some was returning wounded, and some did not make it back, who made the supreme sacrifice. So I felt like that I should go ahead and enter the service. I was entered through the draft system.
Okay. Where were you sent for your training, and what type of training did you get?
Originally, I was sent to Fort Bragg, which is in North Carolina. Then from Fort Bragg to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. I taken basic training at Camp Shelby, basic, advanced, and individual training, and was assigned to a reconnaissance unit, which is a small unit. And after several months training, was sent to Europe. In Europe, after arriving in Europe, we were assigned to 3rd Army, and for the travel across France, Germany, and Austria.
What year were you originally shipped over to Europe?
We originally arrived in Europe January 22nd, 1945.
What was your job when you first went over there?
My job assignment to the unit, primary duties was a mortar gunner, jeep driver, with a mortar crew was primary duty, but the assignment included other jobs, of course, secondary. And secondary being in a reconnaissance unit, you had primary duties like all jobs, but being assigned to the command, we drew missions of patrols, which is night patrols, and being the eyes and ears of the task force commander, we drew assignments of wherever we was needed in the area that we was in the theater.
And where were you during this time? Where in Europe were you sent?
We, excuse me, first assignment was, similar area was Camp Lucky Strike, which is near Le Havre, France. After leaving Le Havre, we traveled up and to Metz, and, or Mines, I guess it would be, crossing the river at Mines, and then cross Germany, which the first area that I recall was near Frankfurt, going across, and all the way across Germany to Austria. We crossed the German-Austrian border and travel across Austria, and the final destination being Linz, Austria. And the last shots that I heard fired was at Hirschenfeld, Linz, Tron area, and the war VE Day was May the 7th, 1945. So that's when the war ended in Europe, of course.
As you were working your way across France and into Austria, how much did you yourself know about what the Germans were doing as far as the Holocaust is concerned?
Traveling across Germany, April 1945, I was on assignment to go to a POW camp, to liberate a POW camp. After that, on April the 12th, 1945, I went to a labor camp. My organization went to a labor camp, which is known as Ohrensdorf, death camp. And I saw a lot of atrocities which had happened at Ohrensdorf, and saw a lot of bodies there that was left by the Germans. I saw where our own people was making the temporary interment there, and I saw many bodies stacked there, still pending interment. I remember this quite well because the President of the United States had died. We just received word through BBC, which is British Broadcasting Corporation. Our president had passed away on the same day, so I remember it quite well, being at Ohrensdorf.
Did you know that you were going into a POW camp to liberate it? Did you know what you were going to find there, or was it all a shock to you?
Let me clarify now. The first was a POW camp, which we did not know, because down in the ranks, this assignment was within 10, 15 minutes we drew this assignment. The reason I remember it quite so well, we had come out of the hills and was refueling our vehicles, armored vehicles, and the platoon commander received a message to proceed to coordinates XX, and at that coordinate we received the mission that an armored task force was going to spearhead in to a POW camp. We did not know, I didn't know what POW camp or where it was at, because a lot of information was not received down to the squad level. Only you drew the assignment, and so we proceeded, the armored task force, to the POW camp. And at this POW camp, name I cannot tell you, it's Stalag at this time, but what we, on arrival there, approximately sunset, we secured the POW camp, trying to prevent the POWs from leaving the camp, because so many of them were suffering from malnutrition. Those that had been there at the time was like skeleton, like death warmed over, which they was not supposed to be fed hard foods, because they was waiting for the medical personnel to catch up with the front line. So our mission that night was to keep it secured, to keep any Germans, and the reason they sent this task force in, the Germans had a habit, when the Americans was moving up, to evacuate the prisoners to the rear. So that night we secured the camp, and of course next morning we moved out to another assignment. So really I don't know what happened, except I know this, that the POWs, the candies and foods and anything that we had on our tracks, which we was not supposed to give to them because of their physical condition, and they taken it, they sort of hoped themselves that we didn't say no. Mm-hmm. So also other things I remember, such as we was not supposed to let them go into town that night. Of course, somewhere or another they got over wire cutters and cut wires, and those that was able to go in went in scouting for the SS and people who had committed these atrocities and all at the prison camp. So I never did get my wire cutters back, but a lot of them made it back, and did single out the guards had put on civilian clothing and was trying to get out with the civilian to get lost where they wouldn't be identified. But some of these POWs was able to identify and brought them back, and they were placed improper arrest, and I don't know what happened to them after that, of course. But that was my experience at the POW camp. But let me clarify now. The death camp was Oberstdorf, and this is where that you saw the atrocities that had been committed. I have some photographs, which I hope to show at a later date at the end of this interview, which may clarify a lot, because a photograph can most certainly clarify more than I can explain in person.
What type of prisoner did you see when you arrived in camp? Were they old, young? Was it a men's or women's camp? Were there any children?
The camp, Oberstdorf, you're talking about? I don't recall the age. What I saw was mixed age, different people. They were suffering from malnutrition, and their dress and sanitation condition was so bad. First of all, let me clarify something. I saw in Oberstdorf barracks after barracks of people who were suffering from malnutrition. Sanitation condition was awful. They had lost weight until they were just skeletons. People, a lot of these people was being used as labor forces even down there. And so it was different ages, but that was a long time ago, so I don't remember. There was so many different, nationalities. You name it, they were at these camps. They were there in a lot of cases. Of course, you would think in Austria, for example, there would be Austrians maybe, but it was not. I saw Hungarians, I saw Poles, I saw Czechs, British, Jewish, you name it. I guess from most all walks of life, they were there. As you know, in the concentration camp, if we may, let's go on to Mauthausen. And at Mauthausen...
Now, this is another concentration camp that you then
correct.
went to.
That is absolutely correct. This is a concentration camp. First of all, we talked about a POW camp. Then we talked about a labor camp. Now let's talk about the concentration camp. The concentration camp that I saw is located near Linz, Austria, just across the Enns River, at a tiny village at that time of Mauthausen. The camp, the concentration camp, Mauthausen concentration camp, was located half a mile uphill. And in this concentration camp, I saw wagons loaded with bodies, what we would call like loading cordwood. They were stacked like cordwood up, like so. Also saw them in trenches and various places for interment. They should have been interred earlier, but the Germans had not, because they vacated when they knew the Americans were coming. They didn't bury a lot of dead, and a lot of the probable was waiting to go to the crematory. In Mauthausen, I saw the crematory. Also, I saw the gas chambers. Let me clarify the gas chamber. They had modified and rigged showers, stalls after shower stall. I assumed going in there, they thought they was going for a shower, when actually it was the gas. And this was the gas chambers that they used. I saw a lot of that there. Also, there was so much there. It's just hard to believe that people could be like that, to treat people the way they did, and starve them for days and weeks and all. Looking like these people looked, again, it looked like they was dead, really, just skeleton and bones, and eyes sunk back like a dead person.
So you saw the barracks where the prisoners were kept. You saw the crematoria itself, where the bodies were burned after they had been gassed in the gas chambers. and you saw the gas chambers.
Yes.
The people that were there, tell us how they reacted when you arrived, the ones that were still left alive.
Let me clarify. First of all, I was not the first unit to arrive there. The concentration camp had been secured when my people arrived there. The mission that we went on was the sea, I guess. Our commanders wanted to make sure that, I remember my commander, anyway, Captain Nelson, wanted to make sure that all his people in the unit saw the atrocities that had been committed. So the people that was there, that was alive, that was well enough to communicate, was so happy with joy. But there again, we must remember, in most cases, those that was there were still suffering from malnutrition, was not able to communicate a great deal. So it's a little hard to communicate because, first of all, we had to, he was concerned about many things. First of all, the sorrow and your own feelings to those people. But there again, the military government was moving in, medical personnel was moving in, personnel to assist these people. And so therefore I did not have close contact with them at that time. If you wish, I can continue on parts of that if you wish, that what I saw afterwards at the temporary hospital, if you wish to. I mean,
sure.
If you like. Excuse me. Later on, this was VE Day, which was May 7th and 8th, that I like to refer to. I think, as you know, Victory Day, VE Day meant victory in Europe. And immediately after that, we met the Russians, and our mission was, the unit we was with was link up with the Russians, and we linked up with the Russian 7th Parachute Airborne Division. And so after the formal meeting with the Commanding General of the division, which is Stanley E. Reinhardt from Asheville, North Carolina, who was the Commanding General of the unit, and a Russian general who the Russians blacked out his name, I do not recall, but for some reason they decided to black out, and his name was ever known to my knowledge. After the socialism was over and General Patton came up and met the Russians, had the ceremonies and so forth, my unit drew the mission of securing Herschen Airfield, which is a forward airfield in Austria near the town of Traun, 10 miles out of Linz on the Wells Highway, near the Wells Highway. This airfield had many, many barracks, foreign airfield, and immediately the American government started moving in POWs and DPs, displaced persons, from various camps. There was a concentration camp, Mauthausen, and 3 POW camps in the immediate vicinity. Plus there was other sub-camps from Mauthausen, which I don't recall details because I wasn't there. But there's thousands of people being brought in as time permitted. Worst cases first. They brought normally the worst ones in first. And these barracks at this airfield, which we, the American government and the British had bombed, of course, we converted it into temporary hospitals immediately. And these people was brought in by stretcher there and was treated by the medical personnel, which they brought in immediately from the rear. And the ones that was able to fly was sent to the rear. And I stayed there for 4 months afterwards. And I saw thousands go through there. And when I left there was still thousands at this forward airfield waiting for evacuation, which you must keep in mind that a lot of them was not able to fly. A lot of them didn't make it. A lot of them was dead on arrival there from malnutrition and the treatment that they had gone through, the experience they had gone through. So we had hundreds of thousands of people, I guess, or more, in that immediate area from these prison camps and concentration camp. And the displaced persons was trying to get home. And in this 4 months before I was signed from there, I saw this happen. And I was happy to get out away from there, but it was quite an experience to share with them. Now, please, I was not in the medic. I was assigned, my unit was assigned to secure the field, to patrol the field, to try to keep law and order and to keep the planes in and out. Because these people are so sick and all, and so happy to be free, that the Americans had freedom. They was wanting to meet with you anywhere they could, stop you, get in your vehicle, and socialize with you, the ones that was able to walk and communicate. So therefore, we had a problem of keeping airfield clear off the runways for their own safety and ours too. So it was quite an experience, but it was nice to share once, but I would not want to share it again. I was happy to move on to the rear.
Did any of the people you met during these few months tell you about their experiences in the concentration camps?
Yes, I've talked with a few, and I've seen the markings, of course, on several, the tattoos. And of course, Mulhausen had a tattoo shop also, where they tattooed numbers and so forth. Also, they had a tooth shop. I don't know whether you've heard tell of it, but this is where the patients was taken in, the prisoners was taken in, and I guess checked their teeth. They had gold extracted their teeth before they went into crematory. So I saw that also. I saw that what we call it, the tooth shop, where they extracted the teeth. And I saw so many personal items there that was removed from the, I guess, where they went in. Going into the shower had thousands and thousands of articles of clothing and things that had been taken from the prisoners before they was put to death, of course. Oh, I'd like to tell you another story if you like. I mentioned to you, and this is, I feel like, ties to Holocaust for this reading. 6 months prior to, I'm told, and I saw the house, as I recall, it was a barrack type building, and the command decided that they would assist the prisoner men, and so they decided to set up a house of ill repute. But they had brought in these prostitutes from the local villages, or someplace, I guess local villages, and charged 20 marks for their service. $5 going to the prostitute, 5 marks going to the prostitute. 15 marks going to the command group of the concentration camp. So therefore, they wasn't doing it for the prisoners. They was doing it to make money for themselves. So I thought I'd add that little part. I still remembered that part.
How did you feel after you had these experiences of going through the concentration camps, the death camps? Can you remember your feelings at the time about what you were seeing?
Yes. It's a feeling that you wish you to get rid of, that you could divorce it entirely, especially back younger days. It's something that you want to forget, the parts. You have feeling as a human being. I think we all have feelings for a fellow man, fellow person, and it was a lot of sympathy for those people, and it was hard to concentrate on your everyday job, because first of all, I had to put myself, it could be me in that condition. It could have been my brother, my mother, my father, my sister, could have been my family. But it was so happened, I was American, being an American, with land of the free. So I'm referring to the displaced persons, of course. I saw in this location 1,000 of prisoners, many prisoners coming through, which was American, British, French, Dutch, and very, all different countries. But it's still there. You never shake it entirely. For many, many years, I refused to be interviewed. I just wanted to come home, get readjusted to life, to, excuse me, let me have a drink. Let me have a drink. Get a little thirsty. I had the pleasure of marrying a beautiful young lady from North Carolina. And I'd like to tell you that story. This is not Holocaust, but it's I working on a defense job. My wife, back those days, young women just like today, why they answered the call of duty, and the call of duty was to work defense jobs. She was assigned to a shipyard in Wilmington, North Carolina, as a tack welder for shipwrights. This is fit and steel, and she just tacked it well. So I was a linesman assigned to her group, to this group of welders, and my job was to keep the lines repaired and make sure they had a line for the torque to work with. So I remember quite well, and she pushed that shield up, and I looked, and so we, after a few weeks of seeing each other, I saw her at the beach and lake and so forth, we became good friends, and I married this young lady. So I was going to get home, forget everything, start a family, and move on with our lives.
How old were you during the months that you went through this experience in Europe?
I was 20. Went over. I was 20 when I went in service and came back. 21.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell today? What you, out of your experiences, what you feel is the most important thing that stayed with you, or anything we can learn from this, or anything else you'd like to add?
Well, yes, I'd like to say something for school or to the children of today. I would encourage the children to stay in school, to get a good education, and to get involved in politics, not necessarily as a politician, but behind the scenes. In all walks of life, I feel this is most important, that we assist people to get in political offices, to make sure we have the best men and women in political offices, to support them, be a politician or be a support group to support this, making sure that they get the best education, where that we can help prevent ever having a dictator as Hitler and Tojo and others, that they can never have the power to bring death and to make causing people to make the supreme sacrifice. You know, from what I study and understand of history of World War II, we had 55 million people who lost their lives through Holocaust and or direct some way in World War II. 55 million is a lot of people. Of course, Jewish, as we know, lost over 5 million. The Russians, millions and millions, and others that we could talk about. But if my memory serves me correctly, 55 million people lost, which should have not been lost. And I feel that for young people, which we have the best system in the world, I feel we could help prevent this ever happening again. I think myself that the German people back in the 30s was hoodwinked because of the financial condition of Germany. And I feel that this is how Hitler got a stronghold, that people was looking for a leader, looking for support for the economy. And I'll always believe that this is how he came to power, is because the people looked the other way because they was hungry and hoping to that we would have a leader to get them out of the financial condition they was in. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Anything else? I'm sorry.
Unless you'd like to add something.
No,
Okay.
I may have missed something when it's all over with. I may remember, I think I've talked enough unless you have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of anything?
Okay. Did you, before you actually were sent into the concentration camps, did you or any of the other soldiers know about concentration camps? Was that knowledge that you all had, or was this very a surprise when you entered that? Had you heard of the concentration camps before?
Yes, I'd heard of concentration camps back prior to going into service from the newsreels and so forth that there was concentration camp, but I did not have any eyewitness facts because, as you know, news media we didn't have the news media we have today, so therefore I had only hearsay. But yes, I was aware. We had talked about concentration camps even down in training. In training, this was brought to our attention that in Germany and throughout Europe there was many concentration camps. Also, we was instructed to make sure that we were very careful going in when we went in, even down in training, if we should go in, that we had people from all walks of life and all different countries, that we had to be very careful diplomatically of how we conducted ourselves. Yes, we knew about concentration camp, but not in depth.
Mm-hmm. So going into it, that was still a shock to you, what you actually
Yes.
saw.
Yeah, you can be trained and told and told and told, and you never know until you actually experience it. You get in, then the shock of what you see.
Mm-hmm. Okay. While you were in Germany, did you have any contact with villagers and German citizens to know whether they knew what was going on at the concentration camps?
You know, I'm glad you asked that question. I forgot to mention that earlier. I did talk with a lot of people in Austria and in Munich. I talked with people in Munich. I was assigned near Munich, Wasserburg, after when I went back to Germany, after 4 months up in Austria. And you know, I can't believe this. People live near the village, near the concentration camp of Mulhausen, or near Dachau. They swear to you that they knew nothing about it. And they'll swear to you, or the ones I talked to swore. And I immediately, my response, I don't understand how you could miss it living so close. I can't believe you. I believe they lied. I think a lot of them knew about it, in my opinion.
Was there a smell in the air? We hear
Yes.
that you could tell just from the smell.
In the immediate area, yeah, you could smell the odor because, first of all, what you have to do, the American government, military, have to go in immediately and decontaminate as much as you can. And since you asked us, is every village we went into to occupy immediately, we used a spray for bugs and to DDT then, and a powder formed. We had to spray the village, and there was an odor. Yes, you never forget the smell odor. For a long time, it feels like you still have it in your nostril too. It's here, not here, but it's there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a hard story to tell,
Yes.
even after all these years.